What if I told you the way it has always been done is not the best way? Facing your fears will change your life. The passion behind this journey is merging two separate worlds into one with the goal of creating value and awareness for a better life.
I'd rather be sidelined trying to achieve greatness than watch greatness achieved and it only set on the sideline. Now introducing your host, Jacob Emery.
This episode is brought to you by R&R Pipeline, an infrastructure company. Our purpose? Enhancing America's infrastructure with a safety-driven, integrity-led culture that provides an environment for team members to grow and thrive. Welcome to another edition of the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast. Today's guest, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have a pen and paper out, I highly recommend you go get one. And as soon as you do that, I want you to understand how impactful this could be if you are a driven individual. Also, with that pen and paper, before you watch the whole show, we got to get this book. This book and Dr. Doug has changed my perception of reality and has absolutely tied together so many loose ends for me that the moment I was listening to this book walking through the airport, it left me speechless because I said, I have never met this gentleman, but he knows me. And I swear he wrote this book about myself because no one could ever explain what he just did in this book. And through the last couple of months, mutual connections, the absolute blessing of an introduction to Doug, and this opportunity is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for myself because Dr. Doug Brackmann, I think you understand me better than I understand myself, and this is the first time we've ever had a conversation.
Wow.
So thank you for joining the show. This is an absolute honor. Thank you.
I greatly appreciate that intro. And yeah, I often say, any psychologist that says they didn't get into psychology to figure out their own shit is lying. So I mean, it is my biography, man. And I spent 30 years trying
That's your life's work, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's been an amazing ride, because do you know my full history? So I'm a high school dropout, lived in a car, drugs, alcohol, the whole thing. I'm sitting in the back of this 1972 Chevy family van, windows all the way around, had a bunch of flags in it. I was a hardcore punker. So living and running a gun on the streets of LA. It was 1986. This big fat lady's banging on my back window with a bag of trash in her hand at 6 a.m. in the morning going, "You can't sleep here." And it was a wake up call of how the hell did this happen? Like, what happened? And it was one of those moments in your life when you can self-reflect and really just look at yourself with curiosity. Not what the hell are you doing mean, but it's like, whoa, wait a minute. What happened?
How did I get here?
And that moment is, what I did. I dropped out of high school and 2 PhDs later, obviously got some things figured out, but that question about what happened and why I felt, and it goes back to second grade, sitting in second grade, watching everyone, being trained how to be freaking assembly line workers, memorizing spelling and multiplication tables and getting A's on their spelling tests and all of that I didn't understand why everyone else didn't see what a waste of time this was. Like, this is not going to help you in this world. Like, what is, but I didn't know why they didn't get it. And so that led me, and that was, I got sober in 1986, delivered auto parts for a couple of years, figured out that sucked. Went back to school. And by the time I got to grad school, it was, 1991, a Time magazine article came out that said, "We found the alcoholism genes, the genetics behind alcoholism." And that was the DRD2-A1 allele gene. It was that first, and oh my God, this gene explains why, alcoholics. And then within 2 years or 3 years, it was also entrepreneurs, eating disorders, gambling addicts, professional athletes. And they're like, well, wait a minute. It's a little bit more complex than that. But that started
Right.
this entire process of me trying to figure out what the hell, how I wound up in a car. And it turned into driven, and so it is, very simply what it means to be driven is that we retain the hunter genetics, while everyone else, 5,000 years ago started to adapt to this incredibly safe, predictable, boring agricultural world that we live in. And, these genes and brain structure and everything else that I've been diving into since writing Driven. We are different. We truly are different. And this default modal network and the stuff I'm into now, we have all the same brain, but we literally are running a different operating system. And so most people are running DOS, we're all running
Right.
literally. Our brains are running 4 times faster, connecting 3 times as many brain parts at this simultaneously. So even though the hardware is all the same, the operating system is just, we are literally wired for a different world. And, that as chapter 1 of Driven says, different is good. And, but we're a herding animal, we're a tribal animal. And if you're different from the rest of the herd, that is terrifying as an animal, because we need the herd to survive. You stack that on top of these genetics of feeling, boredom is that DRD2. Boredom. What is boredom? Boredom's a feeling, an internal sense that there's something missing or wrong in the world. You combine that with the driven, and there's this, there's something missing or wrong with me. And I feel different, and I don't understand why people don't understand me. And I have this inner world, this chronic discontented kind of angsty feeling all the time. It's a recipe for, and that's, we're somewhere between 3%. Daniel Lehman says 2%, I guess a little bit higher. And maybe 6%, maybe 7% of the population, depending on how you measure it and where we are. A lot of us hide, but 2/3 of us are completely whacked off in our addictions, whether that's, whether it's drinking, smoking, or, women or wine, or, choose your poison. Most of us, happy enough to be addicted to work. But that'll kill you just as fast as anything else.
Amen to that, brother. That's the damn truth right there. You talk about this speed of light kind of analogy with how we think and how we process and how we envision something being completed before the problem's even announced. And I can relate to this a lot, because certain times I'm trying to communicate something to my team or just to a friend or anything. And if that person doesn't have a visionary or driven mindset, as I'm explaining it, I can see them completely lost. And I see it as already done. I'm seeing it in my head as it being done at that time. And one of my great friends and mentors, Corey Gregory, we have a couple business interests together, and he's a wild, visionary, driven entrepreneur himself. And we talk about this quite often now because we can relate to each other. We can talk about something that is so absurd to the general public. I see it done. He sees it done. Doug, you would absolutely see it done. We are driven and we know it. But harnessing that and capturing that and trying to find any sort of peace is irrational until you understand that you are driven. So understanding the driven component is crucial. And when I heard all this in your book, I am driven and it's okay. I am not a psychotic individual that needs to be locked up in a mental health institute. I'm just wired different, and it's okay. And I'm fortunate though, Doug, because a lot of people don't ever do this. I'm fortunate that I used it for the greater good and didn't implode along the way. I used it in a positive light with my good intent. And I'm just fortunate that through personal development, I've started to be able to understand the reality of it. Because like I mentioned before we started recording, 12 years for one goal. From 18 to 30, I worked for one goal. And that one goal was going to be the absolute thing that made me happy. And everybody is set out to achieve something that they said would make them happy. and once they achieve it, they're not happy.
Exactly.
And I did the same exact thing. 12 years for one goal. I achieved that goal. 2 days later, I felt so uneasy and so gutted and empty because I felt no joy. So let's transition this into the inner world and the outer world and that dynamic of both of them together and only having one world.
Yeah. So it's the gift of the driven brain and the curse. I mean, it's both a gift and a curse to me personally, and a gift and a blessing to the world, and a curse to the world too. But to really understand driven, you have to understand how identity works. And so this sense of self, what is a Doug, or what is a Jeremy? What is a, Tom, Dick, or Harry? And most people on this planet are not like us. They have, the metaphor that I use in the book. And so I'll go there, and that so we can get that language down. My doctoral dissertation was about self-sabotage. And part of that was, understanding why January sucks at the gym. And it is this, who's in charge of me? And that is, we have two operating systems trying to make sense of this very bizarre experience being alive. But we have one up in our, between your ears called the neocortex, and it is a complex problem solver. Then we have one down below our nose. That is a very old system that is, has a very different agenda than the one between your ears. And so the metaphor that I use in the book is, the Buddha observed, and he was just another wacky psychologist like I am, sure was driven. He observed that we are very much like an Indian elephant with a bunch of monkeys up on top trying to control this elephant. And the monkeys up on top have this vision of six-pack abs and big arms and, everyone's going to love me. But the elephant down below the nose has a very different agenda. So what typically happens is, January 1, here comes the monkeys, and most of us have a big ass gorilla up there, beating the crap out of ourselves, controlling this body below our nose. But then somewhere around, and I did that slide not too long ago, February 14th, just 6 weeks later, 80% of people don't even remember their New Year's resolutions. And so what the hell happens? I mean, who's really in control of me? Is it, this monkey mind, and you're a visionary. You're also a right hemisphere. You're right hemisphere driven like I am, a feeler driven like I am. And so we can imagine, I'm going to finish my, third Ironman, and I'm going to do it this time, and I'm going to do this and do this and do this and do this and do this. But then we have this body that just doesn't want to go along for the ride. And, the classic question, and that is the Buddha question, where is Jeremy? Where is Doug in this, are you the monkeys or are you the elephant? And that is the window. Once you think about it, most people, say they are the monkey mind. Drivens tend to say they're the elephant. Like, oh man, I'm this body that's impulsive and, it's a trick question because the answer is obviously both. And capital A and D, double underlined in my book, neither. And it's that third element that is really, and it's terrifying to think about, that 65% thereabouts of people have no observing ego. They don't have that observer. And if you have a, brain like ours, we have anywhere from 7 to 13 different monkeys up on top of our head trying to control this elephant. They're impulsive and they're people who have an executive function that have the normal farmer's brain. They only have a single writer up on top of this elephant. They have one thinker. They only have one voice in their head, which for me and you, I can't imagine what that would be like.
It'd be so quiet.
Yeah, it'd be quiet and simple. But that is why most people, in this next book that I got coming out, is talking about what's going on in society. And Joe Rogan is, why can't people see, why wearing your mask is stupid. Why can't people see through their narrative that they're living by? That's because they don't have the observing ego. They don't have this third element. And they have a single monkey up there that's damn sure about living to this narrative. And it's like, oh, crap. Like, wait a minute. So driven, I mean, we are, we don't have that single thinker in our head. That's why when we go to a psychologist's office or you try to talk to people that have that single thinker in their head, they look at us like we're freaking nuts.
Yes, sir.
We look at them like they're stupid, slow, and lazy. Like, why can't you see it?
Yeah.
But that the real curse of being driven is that we tend to, as we tend to use our emotions as our foundation of our identity until you meet me, until you really start this practice. And that's why our inner worlds have driven, and we have this very rich inner world of feeling like we're not enough, feeling like there's, and that is why, these are the addictive genetics. This is the addictive personality, even though that's not a formal psych label, but it is. I mean, we are, anything we do that we think can fill this inner void and prove. I mean, I have 2 PhDs. That's ridiculous. I mean, that is stupid on so many levels, trying to get rid of this feeling of not enough. And, what did Jim Spira, my doctoral, first guy who ever shook my hand. Congratulations, Dr. Brackmann. My inner world, that inner feeling like it wasn't enough, immediately hit my monkey mind and told me, haha, he bought it. I'm the imposter. Because I thought it would feel different.
How deflating was that?
Yeah. And it's another one of those moments, though, where, I can ask myself, wait a minute, what am I doing? Because no matter what I do in the outer world, it's still not going to fill this feeling of not enough. And if we're chasing that, treadmill of hell, trying to fill that inner void, that's why if we're not screwed off in our addictions, we're only 5% of the general population. We own 90% of the shit in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's still not enough. But, that is,
it never will be, correct?
What's that?
And it never will be enough.
It's a feeling. That is, right. And I in the last 10 years, all I do is coach entrepreneurs. And, if you got a pen and paper, write this down, because good enough is not a feeling. Good enough is reality. And my doctoral dissertation was good enough. How do I know? Because it's on my wall. Checkbox. They signed it. I mean, it could have been better. Just like everything, it could have been better. But good enough is a reality check. And, and that's, how do you know your taxes are good enough? Well, it's simple. You get audited, and if you can keep a straight face with the IRS, you got it. I mean, it's,
right.
And so good enough is an outer world issue, not an inner world issue. And so as you start to really understand identity, from this, we're not our feelings. More importantly, we're not our thinking either. Mm-hmm. Then who are we? And that's why I say that in Driven. You want drivers, you want to send a Driven straight to hell is ask them to try to figure out who they are. And it is, very simply, I answer that, and I've got another book coming out, 2 books coming out, but it is very simple to answer with what I am. What I am is a Homo sapien. What I am is an animal. And next step to that is I'm driven. So I am different. I have a different brain structure. I see the world differently. I have a complex problem solver in my head. I don't live by narratives. I'm a human bullshit artist. I truly am, because I can construct 13 narratives at the same time and see which one you're going to buy into and go with that. And
right.
We're gifted in sales, but we can get into this a little bit, but we are running big pharma, man. Drivens are taking this world right off the cliff if we let them, because they're taking the sheep with them, and Anthony Fauci, has a special place in hell for that man, but he is driven.
Yes,
You
he
could
did.
hear him
Yes.
constructing the narratives and what narrative do we need to get to go just to, make $79 a shot. And it's just, but it's
It's
the
all a
drivens,
feeling and
like
not
you
a
said,
reality, too.
yeah. And it is the drivens, that are striving for righteousness, just, hey guys, let's just do what's right. And Rogan's a great example of that. I'm not saying anybody's wrong, but I just smell bullshit. let's take it to the next level and see but that is what this, what I'm starting to do this whole podcast circuit again around is trying to really create a network of us drivens, of getting down to the bottom of that we are different. We're on spectrum, we're ADD, ADHD, we're all these different kind of clusters of, we're professional athletes and we're entrepreneurs and we're, gym rats and we're all of these things. But what is the real brain structure that can link us together, give us a deeper understanding, and more importantly, bring us together to fight those that are short-term focused, making money addicts. And, or worse, it's the power, because it's Goebbels and Hitler were driven. I mean, they Genghis Khan was driven, and it's, those of us that are willing to call bullshit on the unrighteous in this world, we need to come together and create a network. And because it's otherwise, the single monkey people, man, the ones that are just buying the narratives are too easily manipulated by us. And so it's a great time to be driven, and it's a great time to be connecting with other drivens.
It's incredible, Doug. I mean, your outlook is absolutely remarkable. My life motto is persistent patience, and the patience part just came in the last few years when I started to understand myself a lot more. But I always link that to my intent. So good intent plus max effort. And Max Effort Muscle is one of the companies that I'm a shareholder of. And it's a supplement nutrition company.
Yep.
And it's all about a lifestyle, though. It's about a max effort lifestyle with good intentions. And that equals to me persistent patience, which is my life motto. Because now I understand why a lot more and who I am. I always kind of had the what, though. Like, what am I? Well, I'm not like anybody else. I'm not going to have a 9 to 5. I'm going to have a 5 to 9 maybe, but it's not going to be a clock in, clock out. I just never had structure. That's why I struggled in school. Yeah. And I had the same thought that you did going through school. Like, I don't need to know that shit. And especially now, knowing with AI and everything else, everything I learned in school had zero impact on my business path and my career. What, helped me get where I'm at today is getting thrown to the wolves to get ate alive, and then me figuring out how to crawl out of that pit and embrace myself by loving myself and who I am and understanding me. And then I always frame it as making myself my own superhero, but not who I am today, who I strive to be in 10 years or 15 years. Yeah. So everything I do today and tomorrow and the next day is for that person I desire to be down the road, because it's on me no matter what. And as I'm sure you've had a similar thought, nobody's coming to save us, especially people that are driven, because people don't even understand us. And I watch Elon Musk. I see interviews of his, and as he's talking, I can feel his pain. Not see, I can physically feel it, because he talks about it, and it's like, God, I understand what he's going through. He's just 1,000 times smarter than I could ever imagine being, but I understand the base level of that. And so much of that, I have said before, man, I wish I could just be normal sometimes. I think it would kill me to try to be normal, and I know it would. Man, sometimes this shit just is so complex and complicated, and it's dark. But understanding it is the ultimate light that we need. And that's why your book had such an impact on me, and your mission and what you are doing is remarkable. And I commend you for it. And I am here at any capacity you need. Use me as any type of guinea pig you need to. Tap into my network at any length.
I am. I got 3 offers going out literally in the next week or two. It's Driven Lab is the base one. We're going to do an assessment per month of anybody who wants to actually start to really crack into how they work and how they operate. And so it's Driven Assessment, on my website. because I've got imposter syndrome so bad. And I'm scared to be called full of shit. And so I tend to overdo things. And so that driven assessment is a real assessment, use my PhD skills and had it nationally normed, send it out to a national norming agency. It's not, some marketing lead gen bullshit. And it's statistically, the internal reliability is a little too low for my liking. So we redid that, but I'm really getting into this building a network. Cause we're not all the same. You look at, you get a room, anybody who goes to any of these masterminds, you see the clusters of introverted drivens and extroverted drivens. And the other one is, right hemisphere drivens. The visionary drivens are very different than the integrators and the implementers, very different. Yes, but we still have that operating system in the brain that we can relate to each other. And so, that's really the next layer that I'm getting into, is really taking it down into. So that's the driven lab, and we're going to do assessments out your wazoo. And they're all relatively short, but then feedback directly to you. And so really giving you insights around it. The identity piece is the most important, meaning that, if you understand our driven brains, we have to put the observing ego in the driver's seat. And, my word for this year is devotion, which means love. And it's devotion-driven discipline is what I'm teaching. So, and we talked off air about that freaking cold plunge. My monkeys and elephant want nothing to do with 40-degree water. But my soul, my observing ego knows, and that's another word for this thing, my knower. I know what's good for me. And, putting that in the driver's seat is what I really think, and Carl Jung, you can hear my driven brain. I pull from everybody to give, parsimony, make things simpler. But the monkey elephant sense of identity is the lowercase self. That's your ego. And, you got an impulse in the body and you got some narrative in your head that explains it and why it's justified, rationalized, or whatever. It's what kills driven people. Because I can rationalize anything. I got a monkey for anything I want to do. And most of them aren't my friend.
You can talk yourself into anything. Yeah.
Exactly. Hold my beer. Watch me jump. But it is the new relationship that I'm trying to create is between the observer and the body. And, as Joe Rogan laughs about, he's the most disciplined, undisciplined person on the planet. So am I. And, the other component of this is really trauma healing. And it's something that, by chance, I believe in synchronicity, but the universe put Peter Levine in my world way back in the day. And so he was my doctoral chairperson's roommate at Berkeley. So in 91, they were friends and he was in San Diego. And so I started in his world way back in the day. And this is why the elephant is always lying to us. Is our trauma. And so, why does it, become harder and harder and harder to keep going to the gym in February, March, and April, and May, and June? Because the elephant doesn't know how to feel good. The elephant doesn't know how to feel success. And so we build our lives up, and then as drivens, we're so good at building everything up and then have one more great idea and you tear the whole thing down and start over. And that's because your elephant doesn't know how to actually feel content. And teaching this elephant how to feel content is, my long-term clients. I've been working with some guys for 10, 15 years, and I've walked several of them into the billionaire club. And it is how they did. How'd you do that? Oh, it's easy. Very easy. You build a system and you build a process and you just stay to the process and you trust the process. Get out of the results. Yes. And all life becomes a split test then. Well, if I do it this way, I get these results. If I do it that way, I get those results. Well, which one is better? Well, I'll do it this way then. Okay. And, teaching drivens how to build farms and businesses And I like it. I think you said it earlier. I too am unemployable. I am not employable as a human being. I truly can't be.
Oh, me either. There's no damn way.
Yeah, but I work well with others.
Hmm.
And if I find others, that can actually implement and help me build a farm, and then we hire farmers to run it, and we get out of the way, it is you can't not become incredibly wealthy in this world. But if you're trying to become a billionaire, you never will.
No.
And so it's a
No.
understanding of really the gift of that we are, and we are just an amazing gift to this world. But we're also the Faucis that are, coming up with ways of really not caring about the sheep.
It's really a blessing or a curse. I mean, that's how I view it. And I've actually wrote that down before. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a blessing to society or a curse, but it's really not the outcome to me either. And I've had to reframe since, the 12 years to buy R&R pipeline, not understanding why I was just miserable after. And so the outcome there was the outcome that I desired to achieve in the timeline I desired to achieve it. But my confidence and my ability and everything that I did after that did not become linked to an outcome. It became linked to my intent. And so, as I talked about persistent patience earlier, max effort plus my good intent equals persistent patience. And as long as my intent is great and my outcome or my effort is max effort, I will live with the outcome, because I've had good things happen to me when I didn't go all in, and I've had bad things happen or outcome wasn't what I desired when I did go all in. We can't control the outcome a lot of the time, Doug. And a lot of the time, if we link it to that, we are linking it to something external that we cannot control. So we are letting someone else have control over, or an external thing have control over our, happiness and our joy, our fulfillment in life.
Exactly.
And that to me is like a spiral to hell.
And it is ties back to that identity. Dr. Doug Brackmann with 2 PhDs sure is going to feel smarter. And if that's the outcome I'm looking for, I'll never get it. And so it is this, I'm a monkey and pure and simple. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my feelings. I'm not, I'm not also my outer world achievements. I'm not those things either. And, when you can actually step back, and that is that observing ego, you can step back into your soul level, and, meditation is a cornerstone of everything I teach. And, and if you're driven like I am, and you've tried some of the classic styles of meditation created by the single monkey people, by the, farmers, it will make your head explode. It will make you worse. It will make you horribly upset, because they are not designed for our brains. And I teach a very practical, meditation. It's simply reality checking. Using your eyeballs, using your senses, is what's happening in this present moment an actual reflection of what's happening in my central nervous system and what's happening in my elephant. Mm-hmm. And there's no correct answer for that, but the curiosity around really scanning the room, looking for, there's no cave bears here. There's no saber-tooth tigers. The present moment is safe. And so a byproduct of that practice is a calmer central nervous system. And when your central nervous system starts to calm down, you start to see reality much more clearly. And more importantly, is there an inner, your inner world becomes calm and the outer world becomes, the line between the inner world and the outer world gets real fuzzy. And actually, how many worlds are there? There's only one world. Very few of us are connected to it. And so meditation is that philosophically and practically, the practice of meditation is where all drivens need to anchor themselves, is that, most of the time our monkey minds, all 13 monkeys, are running in different directions, and our bodies are just being drug along for the ride, and it's tearing us apart. And so knowing that is the foundation, and then the practice of actually opening your eyes and do a little I talk about that breathing. I've driven quite a bit. I got a course on, driven meditation. And then you teach your vagal nerve how to send safety signals into the brainstem while you're breathing this way. Holy crap, I feel better. More importantly, you see reality so much more clearly. You make better decisions. And
you're present, right? You're present. You're in the moment. You're here. You're grounded.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And from that place, then you can actually start to make decisions looking at the KPIs of your life, whether it's, finance, romance, or health, and make better decisions. And, the drivens get off that treadmill of, when it's, crossing the Ironman finish line is an amazing 2 seconds. And then your head turns around and you look behind you, and there's the time on the on the finish line clock, and immediately here comes the judgment, and everything goes away.
What's next, right?
What's next?
And that is one of the driving pits to hell as far as satisfaction, fulfillment in life.
Exactly. Well, it's drivens. Once you get on this side of it, meaning that once you get the driven concepts that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're thinking and you're feeling, and then you start to put into practice these, and I have a very, from the outside, stringent, crazy looking practice. From the inside, it is still this, it's not a struggle as much as it is just a wonderment of who the hell is doing this. I do usually 30 minutes of journaling and reading every morning. Then I'll do 45 minutes to an hour of breath work. Then I'll do 20 minutes of meditation. Then I'll play this. I got a Zen teacher that gave me a goddamn piece of bamboo that he thinks is a flute. I've learned how to play this son of a bitch without cracking it against the wall. And then I go and jump in the cold plunge for, and my goal is 39 degrees for 4 minutes. And it is a no joke, man. And, then I start my day, and then I go and do my calisthenic based exercise, body weight exercise for half an hour. And I intermittently do that all day long. And from the inside, it is all about putting my soul in the driver's seat. This curious, non-judging, what's next? Let's see what happens next if I just keep doing this practice, and it is designing to have the most stable central nervous system I can, so I don't have, emotion in the way of my perception of reality.
I love it. I mean, that is so incredible. I wake up at 3 a.m. 4 days a week, no matter what. And my Wednesday is my day that I sleep in, which is today. And what was 3 a.m., I sleep until 5 a.m. on Wednesdays. So normally it's a late recovery day in my house. And then I get a massage, and I'm fully in on the recovery and the longevity portion, because I have taken that driven trait and applied it to different sporting elements, where I played basketball, I raced motocross, I just still every once in a while roll, but I've done jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing. I did a powerlifting meet last year. I mean, you name it, I've probably tried it to some degree, especially if I am told I shouldn't do it or can't do it. My anger management at 17 was boxing. And I can promise you, it wasn't anger management that was, the presentation to me was, you need anger management, you need to get the hell out of my house. And when I walked back with a bloody nose and a pair of boxing gloves, and, that made me happier or less angry than any anger management would have done. That probably would have pissed me off more, and I probably would have got kicked out of that for hitting somebody, if I'm being honest. But all of them different ventures that I've had, I always went in and obsessed quickly, and then slowly started to fade away. But lifting weights has been a staple for me forever, because I grew up overweight. I was made fun of and, picked on and got my ass kicked in school for being chunky, being fat. And then it led to the secondary insecurity or fear of being scared to be in the public eye or in front of other people. So, in grade school, if I would have...
core, I could have called the book The Shame-Based Personality Type. I didn't want them to see how actually awful I feel about myself on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
it
it's so
propels us to
true.
greatness and propels us to death, man. It's
Yes. And facing it's hard. For me, what I'm doing right now and what I did at 4 or 5 o'clock this morning, today, like every other day, to some degree, I have absolutely faced, overcame, and said, fuck you to my fear. And I put my arm around fear now and tell you, come on, you're with me. I'm in
yeah,
charge. I recognize you're there, but I'm in charge.
and that is the soul in the new relationship with the elephant. That is the path to freedom for Drivens.
Yes.
And, thinking, because I'll have 13 different thoughts about why I should or shouldn't do anything. And knowing in my knower that I'm just going to do it is the most relieving thing in the world. Because then you just keep doing it,
And
and
you don't have to ask
yes,
for forgiveness for yourself, right?
yeah,
You just know.
exactly.
And that in
And
itself can be a superpower.
yeah, and yeah, my word for last year, this year is devotion. Last year was courage. I will never pick that word again. Do you know how courage feels?
How it feels?
Yeah, shitty, man, it sucks. It is.
Yeah, I would say it's probably something I've felt to some degree over the last handful of years, probably on a daily basis.
Well, it's
Where
continuous. Yeah, you're despite how you feel, no matter how you feel, you are going to proceed.
yes,
And
I
that
feel it
that is
every day.
courage. And courage is not coming from your central nervous system or your monkey mind. It's coming from something bigger than us. And that's the old our soul level. What is there, 8 billion souls on this planet? And as Carl Jung says, there's only one.
Mhm.
One whole spirit, one Holy Spirit. And that's what we're tapping into when we get this observer on board, and it changes our relationship with fear, it changes our relationship with our bodies. And it's easier to not put the poison in it when you got to live in it.
Absolutely. I always talk about on a wellness or health type journey. Whenever you start, normally it's a motivation because the pain of staying the same is bigger or greater than the pain of change. But motivation is very, very it's not permanent because motivation doesn't get my ass out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can promise you that.
Exactly.
It's discipline and it is just a non negotiable. I don't even consider the snooze button. I just get up and go. It's unconscious now. I have been doing it for 20 years though, because of facing them fears. And now I understand and have harnessed that ability where I don't negotiate with myself. And people ask me, how the hell do you get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning? I set my damn alarm. That's it. I don't
Exactly.
negotiate. I just do it.
How do you, and that question about who you are, that is who's the one, and that I encourage anybody who actually has never done a cold plunge, because it is such a magical experience. And I got the AR 500 or the cold plunge 500, and so you can get completely under, sitting in a squatted position, and I'm under that thing, feeling the imposter syndrome. It's really quite remarkable. Like, who the hell is this under the water right now?
And why the hell are you doing this? Like, what's the win? Like, this is dumb as hell. This shit's cold.
There is, because you don't feel like a badass. You don't feel like this. I mean, you
No.
feel cold. I mean, that is
Because
what
it
you
is
feel.
cold.
It is cold.
Yeah.
And that soul level, just being the experiencer. And I'm just this experiencer in this weird meat suit, that is freezing its literally ass off. And I do I get up at 5 is my rolling time. And I've had a sunrise practice. I watch the sunrise every day and see the sunset every night if I can, just to kind of cap the day. It's read somewhere, it's supposed to be good for your biorhythms, but what the hell?
I mean, I can imagine it is, though. You just think about being present in that moment. And this is something, Doug, that I appreciate you saying because the old school gym is where I train at. The 4 a.m. crew, it's like a part of my identity now, and it's part of my lifestyle. My mentor, Corey Gregory, is co-owner of the gym and supplement company. It's all warehouse under one building. And I'm normally one of the first 2 or 3 people to show up in the morning, about 3:30. I'll hop on a bike or do whatever I'm doing to warm up. And I have 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes of presence and gratitude before the music's cranked up and the iron's being thrown around. And I know that it's going to end one day. It doesn't last forever. And the fact that I know that and that I can embrace every morning that I'm able to walk in there, it creates such a dynamic understanding of life and the blessing of being in the moment. Because I
Yep.
have always been a driven individual that was about the accomplishment, about the accolade, about this external thing. But really, the joy of the journey for me hasn't became the accolade. It's not the accomplishment at the end that I can hang that plaque on the wall. It's how I feel in here. The
Yeah.
success isn't external, it's internal.
And it is, Carl Jung said that the going is the gold. Yeah. And the part that, drivens and the practices that I teach, particularly the meditation practices, and I haven't done them since COVID. I've got a group of guys that I used to do a Zen meditation retreat, and it's literally Japanese prison camp. I had SEER instructors, guys, search evasion, the real Navy SEAL badasses that think,
Mm-hmm.
I can do anything. They took one look at this and go, oh no, you're on your own. Screw that.
I'm not even going to mess with that.
You're not even going to touch that because
Mm-hmm.
it's sit with yourself for 17 hours a day for 7 days in a row.
I mean,
With
17 minutes sounds scary to me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But there's no logical reason it should be scary.
No.
And the demons that you think you got on the inside are only just sensation in your body. And as long as you can keep them as sensation and keep them at a narrative land, but day two is day one is incredibly difficult. Day two is hell. Day three is impossible. Day three is this thing where you have to break through that identity and you become this observer in this body. And then you pass into this state of presence that is remarkable.
I'm sure it is. You know, obviously much different scale, but as we kind of discussed before, I friends with Rob Dubay. Rob's a mentor and a friend, and I had the honor of interviewing him. I went on the Entrepreneur Elite podcast, and Do Nothing, the book by Rob Dubay, was like, holy shit, this is kind of crazy. That's a wild concept. And I read it probably last year. And then I went through the 10 Disciplines course with Rob and Gino Wickman, and they reference driven a lot. So,
Yeah.
discipline 4, be still. And I'm just going to read a portion of this. As a driven person, you go hard all day, every day, but at intervals, you must stop. Literally put on the brakes and just breathe. I was so fortunate that I was able to meet Brian Peters. He played for the Houston Texans and for 7 or 8 years. And after he retired from the NFL, he went on a mission to help people with breathing presence. And that's who got me into breathing practice and the cold plunge and the sauna.
Yep.
And he calls it fire and ice. And he has a routine that he gave me with the breathing meditation practice and more dynamic stretching and mobility work for about 20 minutes to a half hour before getting into the fire and ice. And similar to what you had, 3 minutes in the ice and 20 in the sauna, do 2 rounds of that, and then 15 to 30 seconds with a full submersion in the ice after, the last sauna round. I started taping my mouth shut at night, breathing through my nose. My years of boxing, I have a deviated septum in the one side. I can't breathe out of it to save my life. And so I started taking more intent with my nighttime and my sleep because I don't sleep a lot of hours, but my quality is very high now, where before I would only sleep a few hours and then not actually have any quality of sleep. So I was just like just a doormat all day. I couldn't get out or, get my energy where it needed to be. My recovery sucked. I'd have sinus infection all the time. But being still and breathing, holy shit, is it incredible. In the first 15 seconds of that cold plunge, and I'm sure you can relate to this, for me, I have to be focused on a nail in the fence or a piece of grass, or I'm so laser focused on one thing to get the hyperventilation out of the way, basically, where 15 seconds, I think I'm going to puke, I'm going to shit, I'm going to pass out. I don't know what it is, but I have to calm myself down at such a drastic rate or I'm not going to make it. It's fear, and it's all made up. Yes, it's cold, but it's really not a reality. It's all up here.
So
And
I
harnessing
cannot
that and then
wait.
understanding it's so good.
Yeah, and I did perfect opportunity to tell you, I cannot wait to get you behind a gun. And so my Bujinkan teacher, a guy named Randy Kelly, who I was doing Bujinkan, I came out of a keto, figured out I couldn't beat anybody up. So I did Krav Maga for a minute, and then figured I could fight somebody now, and then heard about this Bujinkan and started that. And Randy was my instructor, and he Navy SEAL sniper. And I had been a long range competitive shooter all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And we come up with this idea. I'm trying to rebrand myself away from being a psychologist. This is 10, 12 years ago now, 15 years ago. Let's take a bunch of guys long range shooting and teach them meditation at the same time. And so fear,
Which is incredible, right?
yeah, we backed into it. I had no idea what a powerful tool it would be and how much fun it would be. And, because it's tax deductible, I have like a $50,000 a year gun budget. And I had built the most amazing, I got a 375 Chi-Tech. If there are any gun nuts out there, it literally, it has a 600, 800 yard more range than a 50 BMG. I mean, it literally go through an engine block in a mile.
Wow.
But what spurred this this ability to actually change your relationship with fear? And there is no fear in the present moment. There can't be. Fear is an anticipatory, something bad is going to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to discern, another big word that I'm into, thinking, being able to discern, well, there's my monkey mind and there's my elephant. And the one who's actually discerning, another great word for your soul, is the discerner. And when all three of those different components of the identity come into one, when the Trinity becomes one, it is one of the most incredible flow states you can ever have. But the only way to get there is move through that anticipatory fear. And I will kiss your ass, literally, if you don't anticipate the recoil of a 425 grain bullet going down the barrel at 3,200 feet per second. The recoil on that 375 Chi-Tech is no joke.
I cannot
And your
even
elephant,
imagine.
your elephant is like, oh no. And that anticipatory flinch that you're feeling goes away as the more present you become. And it is a new relationship that you can have with any fear. And, the anticipatory, I don't want to get in the cold plunge. Well, you're not ever going to get into the cold plunge. What you're doing is just taking one step in and putting one toe in and feeling the experience as you slide into the cold plunge. And there is no fear. And that capacity, to actually realize this and experience it is good and bad. Good news is you can do anything. Bad news is you now have no excuse to not do anything. So it is, You got to build a process. And if you build a simple process you can follow, you can do anything in this world. And so it's,
Right.
But try to explain that to single monkey people and makes their head explode.
Yes. And they look at you as a ignorant person or someone that's just not realistic, but our lives are not realistic. We don't look at reality as the reality a lot of time. And that's why I have a quote that I came up with that you can't break the mold without breaking through barriers. So if you want to break the mold, you got to break through barriers. And that's what we do as driven people. When you tell us that something's not possible, it's the incentive for us to go prove you wrong a lot of the time. And that's what, sparks this igniting thing underneath of us that just evolves very quick and accelerates that driven component. And fear is such an interesting thing because I've understood the reality of fear, but I never understood fear until I faced it fully. And so when we are faced with fear, I look at it like it's this vision of miles and miles long of fear. And when faced with it originally, it looks like it's really deep. So you got fear that's so deep and it's so long and you can never overcome it, but it's all made up. And overcoming fear, to me, the most important thing you can do is face it as fast as possible, because the longer you wait, the bigger it is perceived to be. But in all reality, when you step in, it's only a few inches deep, and it's not a really deep thing. It's not the 20, 30-foot thing that you're looking at. And the reality is you can step into it and walk right through it. You might get wet, you might fall down and bust your ass a few times. That's just part of life. But the fear gets bigger as we sit there and think about it and let it become bigger, because it's not going to get smaller. Our brains are wired to be negative by nature. You can correct me if I'm wrong
Oh,
with
no,
actual data, but in general,
and we are addicted to it. We are addicted to fear.
yes,
And the capacity to actually, I mean, fear is not real. It's,
it's made up.
and our brains and our bodies, that's where, come full circle back to trauma, is that we are anticipating the worst case scenario all the time. And you touch a hot stove, and all the cells in the nerve pathway remember that experience. And then every time you see a square metal box with 4 circles on top, you get a little bit of this fear in the body, whether the stove is hot or not.
Yes.
And so that stepping out of that and reality testing, is it a snake or is it a stick? By default, we assume everything is a snake. Worse is, good visionary drivens like we can come up with some amazing business ideas where we feel so good about something, we can't even see the snakes. Everything's a stick. And that's just as sabotaging as everything's a snake. So it is that capacity to be in reality, and there is no fear in the present. And that, let me be present to it and get an honest look at, what is my idea? And, some of my long-term clients would walk in with their great ideas and say, please talk me out of this. I need to hear everything wrong.
And that's where the network and the power in your network is so crucial. The people that you put in your network, your environment is absolutely critical, good and bad, for your outcome in life and what you want to, have fulfillment in. For me, when I walked in strategic coach originally, I did not feel like I belonged at all. So I'm a year 4 strategic coach. And when I walk in there now, I feel like I'm at home. My presence, my being, it's like the floodgates of being present and in this moment is so raw and so inspiring. The last 2 years when I walked out of strategic coach, Doug, I'm telling you what, I knew I belonged, and it changed my life. Paradigm shattering of some sort. I walked out a different person than who I was when I walked in. And having that environment, that network, and what you're doing and what you're putting together with the collaboration side of it is so incredible, because being driven is lonely. Being an entrepreneur is lonely. And there are so many people that just have this lack of fulfillment in life and a lonely life because of that. And you look at rock stars or someone that's accumulated wealth but commits suicide or is just a miserable person, they never are able to capture the presence in that being in reality, because they have, on the external, they have everything you would ever want. Internally, they're probably empty. And so understanding that is so incredible. And then there's a quote, I know it's in your book. It's a quote that's absolutely one of my favorites. A master in the art of living draws no sharp distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence through whatever he is doing and leaves others to determine whether he is working or playing. To himself, he always appears to be doing both.
Yeah, that's Chateaubriand. That is the name. Yeah, Driven Mastery is the name of my next book coming out is Sheep, Wolves, and Shepherding. So most people are sheep, they wind up, but it is, I'll say it this way very simply. Anyone proclaiming to be a shepherd in this world is actually a wolf. If you really want to be, Fauci's a great example of that. I am your shepherd. It's like bullshit. You got to own your wolf. and what you and I are doing is owning that wolf by putting our soul in the driver's seat. Our soul is the one that is the experiencer, is the knower, that knows righteousness, that knows, there's 43 names for God in the big book, and that righteousness is one of them. Presence is another good one that I like. But these are states of being, and these states of being, are not of our flesh. And so it's, being able to discern that and feeling that my elephant wants the easier, softer way. And my monkey mind will collude and come up with great ways to get it, get rich quick and everything else. But it's my soul that really knows that this is the real me, and I'm careful with this, depending on the audience. Some people take real offense to it, but a lot of single monkey people are NPCs, man. They're non-participant player, non-player characters in this video game, this simulation trippy thing we're having here doing live. But the real game here is to put our soul in the driver's seat. And, as you get better and better and better at this, the more freedom you have. But the network and, as drivens, we know loneliness. Loneliness is in the elephant. Aloneness is in your soul. Mm-hmm. And we know that alone feeling deep in us. We can be a room full of people, the wrong people, and it feels so freaking alone. But you go into a room, strategic coach Dan and Babs are great, or Genius Network, or any of these big mastermindy ways. It is just a collection of drivens, and you get to, first time in my life I've ever felt like I'm finally home. I get that in 12-step too. I mean, I can find that in 12-step. You find it in niches all over the world, but I am putting together a network to really anchor us into that we are different. And, the differences between the drivens are magic when you put together a team of us. God, we will change the world.
Absolutely. And it is the driven individuals that do change the world because they're crazy enough to believe it's possible. And that's why they do it. Ultimately, you look at all the pioneers from the early 1800s, they were so far out there and so far driven in a world of scarcity. They had such an abundance mindset that you couldn't stop them at all. It was impossible to stop them. And they were really the pioneers that set us up today to be able to do what we do. And understanding that, guess what? I am driven and it's okay. And this person over here might not be driven, but that's also okay. It just is who we are. It's what we are. It's okay either way. But understanding that reality is a power in itself.
Yeah. Chapter 1 of my new book is Tend to My Sheep. I think that was one thing Jesus said to Peter, which was the driven of the bunch. I mean, he was the one who was getting out of them. He was the one who got out of the boat. He was the one cutting people's ears off. He was the one running security for Christ. And it's, we're about 1 out of 12 people, but I think we're really important in this world. And I think we need to come together and stop trying to make a quick buck, and actually that philanthropy movement, the second mountain, third mountain of really coming together. I think we can. I don't think anything. I know we will change the world. So.
That's where the real success criteria, at least from my perspective, comes in. It's not wealth accumulation. It's not, we want to achieve this amount of wealth originally, probably because of adversity or fear or pain of some sort, and not the environment that we're coming up through or in creates this urgency for wealth or financial stability. But then once that's captured and understood, it's not something that gives you internal satisfaction in life or fulfillment. But giving that away and helping other people and creating value in the marketplace is probably one of the most rewarding things that I've ever been able to do. Starting the show was a leap of faith with good intention. And I told myself, I'll be lucky if it gets any traction at all in 2 years. I'll be lucky if in 2 years it has any ROI, or I meet anybody like a Doug or anyone else that I've had on, like Rob Dubay, any authors. It won't go anywhere for 2 years, but it'll be all right. because my intent's good. And my podcast with Rob Dubay, I was on his show before mine even released. And it was like, holy shit, this network thing is something I've always been decent at, but it's getting a lot bigger faster. And now my life is so different. And then the show's not even been out a year yet. But it's because I always had good intention with the show. And I just want to create value and awareness for other people and let them know that it is okay where you're at and break down that reality. And I'm actually writing a book myself, How the Iron Built My Infrastructure. And it's framed in 3 phases. We have the breakdown. So breaking down the reality, the pain, the setbacks, the adversity, the fear, and really identifying that reality. So write down all the issues that you have in life, all the ones that you cannot control the outcome, mark them out. The ones that you can control the outcome, take the top 3 and then focus on the first one as a priority, the biggest return on investment for changing your life. So that's the breakdown. And then being the breakdown is a place you don't want to be, take that breakdown and build a bridge away from it. So break down and then build a bridge away from it. And then the third phase is the build up or the highway to success. And a lot of the time people just got to get out of the place they're at, and you don't have to know what the end looks like. Just
You
know
can't. Yeah, you can't know
I
what the
don't
end
want to be
looks
here
like.
anymore.
Exactly. You can't know what the end
Never.
looks like, and that freedom of thinking that the end is going to, if I know what the end looks like, I won't be as scared, is such a trap for most. And that's being able to say, I don't know what the end's going to look like. And this one step that I need to take isn't that scary. And I can take it and then take the next and take the next and take the next. Oh, this has been fantastic.
And you can have a direction, a vision for 10 years. That's great. How you're going to get there, though, I promise nobody can have a 10-year plan and it goes exactly according to that plan.
The way,
have a
the
direction,
way I
have
do
a place.
the visionary thing, very simply, is how do you want to feel? How do you want to be 10 years from now?
Yes.
Not caring what it looks like.
Describe your perfect day. That's how I frame it.
Exactly. Yeah, the perfect day, perfect week. All right, brother. I got to get flying. I got time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Doug, I absolutely appreciate it. I cannot thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, IamDriven.com, the book Driven. Doug, go ahead and tell the people where they can find you. I know you have
everything
some new
Dr.
books coming
Doug
out,
is
if you want to announce that.
IamDriven.com. So you go there, that'll get you into the assessments, that'll get you in the network, that'll get you my book and meditation courses and everything I got going on. And a lot more stuff is coming out. I got a YouTube channel just getting launched here in the next week or two. So a lot of good stuff happening. Yeah, it's time for Drivens to come together. And I was going to save the world from the other Drivens, man.
So, the thing about it is us collaborating against the greater good. We're doing this for the greater good. We are not competing against each other. We're competing against the people with bad intent. And your
Correct.
approach in general is absolutely phenomenal. Dr. Doug, I cannot thank you enough. It was an honor. Driven. I am driven. You are driven. And it's not a problem.
Yep.
It's absolutely all right. And we're in
Thank you,
control
Jake.
of it, my friend.
Thank you,
Appreciate
brother.
you coming on the show. Iron and Infrastructure Podcast. We're out. This episode is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. For all your supplement needs, go to maxeffortmuscle.com.